All right, so today we are going to talk about synthetic biology. This is something that we have touched on quite a few times in the last few episodes. So if you've, been listening kind of in real time or watching live, you've heard us mention this, and we've gone in a little bit, but we just wanted to do a whole podcast today on this topic. So, this is the Take Your Health Back Now podcast. We are recording live on February 9th if you're watching this sometime in the future. So, I always like to just give the date because sometimes information changes. And maybe you're not sure where you're at
Yeah.
in the podcast kind of series. So, we are going to stick to that topic today, hopefully. We've been doing a lot of talking today. We had a challenge going on in our private group, and that was going really well. So hopefully this topic doesn't go super long and will help you kind of understand the importance of this, the why you need to keep an eye on it, and how you can kind of find it out there in the public, in the wild, because it isn't something that's really
Avoid.
easy to just glancing at something. No. So we want to empower you with some more information.
Yes. So I've been talking about this quite a bit, actually. I kind of got obsessed with it. And actually, the way I found this, there's just been no information on it. So the way I actually found it was when I was looking into the mRNA vaccine, the
Right.
COVID vaccine, whenever that was, a couple of years ago. And I came across this. And then in doing so and going down a rabbit hole, I found this, and literally, I mean, this is our job. This is what we do. We were researching all the time, and I had never heard of it.
Yeah.
So the general public has probably never heard of it. Maybe now, and we have been talking about it some, but we want to just really focus on this topic today and go in depth on it. So this is synthetic biology. Basically, I think we all understand, maybe not understand, but know what GMOs are. But they're calling GMO 2.0.
Right.
So GMO was taking, like a strand of DNA, slicing it and putting in a different piece of some other species DNA.
So we're taking a naturally occurring gene and we're modifying it. We're either modifying it with outside genes or we're going into the genome and changing it around or taking things out, but it's still naturally occurring.
Right. And then it turns into not naturally occurring because you changed
Yes.
it, you added to it to
Right.
do a specific job. That is a GMO.
Right.
And GMOs have been around long enough now, a couple decades now, that they are now labeled. Okay. So they've been labeled for a while. Actually, not labeled,
It
but
depends on where you live.
yeah, depends on where you live. And also the GMO project, they started putting their label on it, they would check. And really, there aren't that many GMO crops.
No, the issue is that the things that are genetically modified are the things that are most prevalent, especially in our food system. They use it for other things too, but almost always it ends up back into the food system.
Right. And GMOs, okay, so recently, just I think last year, GMOs, they're in everything, like Jenny said, all the food, because you're looking at like soy and corn are the big ones. But they changed the labeling on that to now genetically engineered. So if you look at your box of Cheerios and it says genetically engineered ingredients, that is really GMO. So GMO 2.0, which is synthetic.
I feel like this could be a Dr. Seuss book.
Seriously, it sounds like it.
Yeah.
Or a Frankenstein lab gone wrong book,
Right.
or lots of things. But synthetic biology, GMO 2.0, does not have to be labeled. So when you see that word genetically engineered, that means regular GMOs, which are bad enough. This, no labeling whatsoever. Okay.
Right.
Also, other words for this, synthetic biology is just one word. So it's also under bioengineering, biotechnology, bioavailable, and then it goes into molecular biology, bioinformatics, computer science, physics, engineering science, agriculture, microbiology. It's kind of incorporated itself into all of those things on top of our food supply.
And you just have to, like, you have to know those keywords, but then understand they can be used, like bioavailable can be used because they're a better version of something that you can absorb, or it can be that they're studying and transforming things. That's
right,
just one of them. So just make sure that, like, that bio part, because it's biology. And then definitely if it's got anything on it that sounds sciencey,
right.
like engineering or tech, then you don't even have to look into it. That's going to be bad. But if it's bio and then something else, look into it, figure out what they mean, and what the processing is with it.
Right. And with that word bio, so biology and the prefix bio means life.
Yeah.
But anything that is life or nature, they're not going to label as bio anything, right? So when you see that word bio, like on a lot of organic ingredients now, or not ingredients, like produce, you'll see the biologic hue, the kind of French word. That means that they have been sprayed with this synthetic biology, so it's really a deceptive word. Or bioplastics is a big one right now. It means they were made with this process, but it sounds good. Like anytime you hear the word bio, I think most people understand that even if they don't understand that it means life, they understand that it's usually a good thing.
Right.
It sounds like biology, but it's
And that is usually a pretty good tactic for something that you are creating that's a little bit scary and has unknown side effects or might be perceived as bad by people. If you can find a label that people don't quite understand, but has generally been positive, if you can put that on your thing and spin it, then people they don't stop to think about it. They're already used to it.
right. Yeah. And I think that's where they're going with this. So the synthetic biology or genetic engineering is quickly being pushed out into everything.
Yeah.
So we've talked about that. We were talking about this last year in our podcast, actually. And so Jenny can probably explain it better. So what it is they can read the DNA of anything now, right? With the CRISPR technology. After the genome project was finished, they had that technology in place, so they can, take the DNA of anything, computer program it, so it's the same DNA sequence, but now it's a computer program of the sequence, and make something. So it's kind of like I said in the past, it's like the 3D printing.
Right. So like how when we were talking about genetically modified, that means like, they take that corn plant and its genes and they extract it from a corn plant. And then they might insert a gene from an insect, that real insect, they just took part of it and put them together and kind of like graft them. So you get, like Kendra was saying, like a Frankenstein, like something that wasn't in nature before, but the sources were like real live things. So now they can take that gene from that corn. We're just going to stick with this example. I don't know if they do this. And instead of having to have a real life corn plant to take it out of, they just said, oh, we know what that gene structure is. So we're going to put it into this computer. Beep, beep, boop, Jetsons, it's going to come out. And then you can think, if just to visualize, think of it as like a plastic puzzle piece. And then they're going to take this insect and they're going to be like, oh, we know how to do that. Beep, beep, boop. Now we've got the plastic puzzle insect. And now we're going to clip them together. So now we have this product where it's engineered. This biology has been engineered. It hasn't been modified, it's been completely created from something that wasn't out there in nature. Like the prototype was, but the actual pieces weren't.
Right. And the way they do it, since we don't have Jetsons,
But
they
I
use,
mean, they're pretty close to what we're doing now.
yeah, exactly. That was a really good analogy. I was just going to say, rather than now you have a thing, then they take this coating
Yeah.
and they can grow it in a yeast
Yeah.
or a mold, something like that. And they ferment it. And I really don't understand the whole process, but then they can grow this new thing that they want to use, and then they can use it in products. But like exactly what Jenny just said, it's not modified anymore. It is a whole new product that is completely engineered and foreign to our bodies. But and here's another example. I think we said this last year in a podcast. The mission statement of synthetic biology is to take life and make it better.
Right.
So they're taking something that's perfect and they think they're going to make it better. So that's
And
the
when you hear a phrase like that, you're like, oh my gosh, that's so amazing. What a lofty goal. But you have to kind of stop and think, better for who? Better in what way? What does better mean? That's a pretty vague word. Is it better for the people that own it because they're going to make all kinds of profits and they're going to own patents on every single thing, including living things? Or is it better for the general population?
So let's just take on what Jenny just said. Stevia, for instance, I think we all know what stevia is. Stevia actually comes from a plant. It's a leaf from a plant. And if you are making real stevia, you would take the leaves, dry the leaves, crush them, steep them in water, kind of like a tea, make a tea. And then the liquid left, and strain the leaves. And then that liquid that's left is sweetened, and you can use that as a sweetener. That is true stevia. Stevia, as it is sold now, is this synthetic biology.
Right.
They have taken the DNA from the stevia leaf, the Jetson thing, and made this white powder substance.
Yeah.
And now that's what they sell as stevia. So what you're buying is completely not natural. And then the other thing, to play on what Jenny just said, is a stevia plant is not going to make anyone any money except for maybe the nursery that sold you the plant.
Right.
That's it. If they make this Jetson thing that's the exact same DNA of the stevia plant, but now it's a completely genetically engineered product, they own the patent, like Jenny said, and they think about stevia. It's in everything. It's in all the grocery stores. So many people use it because they think it's a substitute for sugar, a good substitute. It's like $1 billion business.
Yeah.
So you get from a plant that maybe was $5 that the nursery is selling to a product that is now $1 billion business.
Right. And the thing is, you know, maybe stevia is pretty easy to grow. Maybe it's a crop that they could make money, some form of profit if they grew it and processed it, and it's still really processed, and you shouldn't buy it even if it wasn't SynBio. You can grow your own. But anyway, so they could do that, right? And they could control that, but they can't control everything. They can't control the growing environment, what they're, what kind of yield they're going to get out of their crops, and they can't patent it. It's a plant.
Right.
Until they start to engineer or modify it, everyone else can do that. So someone else can take their business, copy it, do it a little cheaper, and they don't want that. So if they completely engineer it, now they have a patent on it because it's not a stevia plant, it's something they've engineered. So now they have control over every single piece of their processing and manufacturing, and no one else can copy that exact thing.
Right. So it's a huge moneymaker as far as business goes. So you know, what it is, I wrote this down. This is basically what Jenny just said. It involves redesigning life. That's their idea. That's their nice way of putting it. They're
Doesn't everybody want a better life?
Yeah, they're taking life and redesigning it. They're redesigning organisms, for useful purposes by engineering them to have new abilities.
Right.
That's the tagline. So
I mean,
think
that's
about that.
really good copy. They have a very good copywriter. Like, if
Right.
you were just to read that to someone without knowing what the product was, it's all positive. You're making life better. You're redesigning things to be more useful.
Right.
But everything has its use. We are an ecosystem. We're all tied together. So now if you know that if a piece of an ecosystem goes away, that ecosystem changes and it can have a terrible impact. Now, if you're just putting something into this ecosystem that is not, there through natural processes, it can also cause an imbalance and negative impacts. And we don't know what those are going to be.
Right. And okay. And so on that, uh, we don't know what it will be because there's been no zero testing. They're just throwing this in here, and more companies are popping up that are doing this, and they're just coming up with new products all the time. Like, this is one of the fastest growing industries right now. It's projected by 2030 to be just like $1 trillion business.
Right.
So there's been no studies, no long-term studies. We're in this crazy experiment across the board. It's just not people, it's like all life
Right.
this is affecting. Um, but yeah, there's no studies, there's no testing on humans, there's no testing on animals, there is no labeling. They
Right.
don't
And the reason why they're you know, if you are like, why is it not tested? Why is it not labeled? That's crazy. I can't believe they could get away with that. First
right,
of all, the government doesn't enforce that very strictly for anything. And then for this, because it is bioidentical, there's that word again,
right,
it's exactly the same scientifically, is their talking point, that why would they need to test it? If it is, genetically identical, then it's just as safe.
right. So back to the stevia idea. Stevia, the leaf, is a natural organism. It's a leaf. It wouldn't be a good idea to eat a ton of it, but
Right.
eating the stevia leaf is considered safe. So why wouldn't the exact bioidentical replication of that also be considered safe? And so that's how they get around it, like Jenny said. So it's not a stevia leaf at
No,
all.
it never was.
Right. But if you think about DNA or protein of anything, in a really simplistic form, it's a very long sequence of letters, basically. But if you think about it like XYZPDQ, that's the genome of a stevia leaf. So then when they do their genetic, or their computer programming Jetson thing, it comes out on the other side, it's still XYZPDQ.
Right.
So therefore, it's the same, is what they say.
Right.
But your body recognizes life, right? We're connected. Like Jenny said, we're all connected in this big ecosystem, this giant microbiome. We are all connected, life to life. And on top of just that connection with life, what your body recognizes, also there's the energetic
Right.
component. That everything is energy, everything has a frequency. And if you imagine the frequency of a stevia leaf, it's a frequency that resonates with your body. Your body recognizes it. You eat it, it recognizes it, and can process it. If you're eating this bioidentical stevia thing,
Yeah.
the frequency is completely different.
Right. It
And
is synthetic. It's legitimately synthetic. You can't argue with that. And think about another piece of this is, you know, 100 years ago, people didn't know what DNA was. They didn't know what the XYZ P to Q at the base level. They would have no idea what that was. Now we've gotten that technology and we're just running with it. Who's to say in another 50 years we won't discover, hey, there's all these other really important components that make up that stevia leaf outside of XYZ PDQ. And in order to replicate it, you have to include all of that. You know, that's
Right.
what we're trying to explain, is that they're just taking, it's not simple. Genes are pretty complex, but they're just pulling that protein and copying it. They're not copying life. It's not growing, being born. It doesn't have a life cycle, you know, and those things have energetic, scientific, all kinds of pieces and parts that we might not be able to label or see yet, but they're there.
Right. And I think this is my personal opinion, but you know, so that if you really look into this and the fact that they're trying to take life and make it better, the one thing about life is kind of what Jenny just said. The one thing about life that they cannot replicate is that life force energy. And well, some of you may think that's woo-woo, but it's not woo-woo. It's real. It's been proven. It's a real thing. You can even see it with, you know, certain type of photography. Everything has a life force energy that is alive. It's that electrical you know, output that we have. So
Right.
if you could really look, some people can see it. Everything that is living has this electrical aura. A lot of people call it an aura. But that's the one thing that they can't replicate, is that
That's
life.
the one thing we know about now. There could be lots of other things.
Yeah, right. But now
Yeah.
that's what I mean. And they can't replicate that. And that is something that is something that your body recognizes, and that's part of health and healing. And
Right.
without that, that's a big problem. So I just did want to say this real quick, and we kind of touch on it, but the word synthetic, so we're talking about synthetic biology, right? So the word synthetic means made by a chemical synthesis or to imitate a natural product. That's, if you look it up, that's the definition. Biology or bio means life or the study of life. We kind of touched on that one. So if you put those two definitions together, you get what we're saying. But those are the actual definitions, like from the dictionary.
Right.
So they are listed as natural. We said that. It is not required to be labeled, again, because it's natural. It's a natural product. We have touched on appeal, because that is the one synthetic biology product that everyone seems to be, it's like a big buzzword right now. And we've said this before, but we need to say it on here in case you've not heard it before, is that the appeal, the reason that is labeled is just a marketing thing, because
Right.
they
wanted to appeal to a certain audience.
Right. Exactly. The people that wanted their produce, you know, maybe people that don't eat produce because produce goes bad quickly.
Or they don't buy organic because it goes bad too fast and it costs too much to throw it away.
Right. So they came up with this appeal so that it would prolong the life of produce. And they thought there was a portion of the, you know, consumers that would like that. And so that's why they labeled it. And that is a synthetic biology product, but it is just one of hundreds and hundreds of synthetic biology products that don't have to be labeled. So just keep that in mind. Yeah, it's an emerging field that just brand new field. And again, it's brand new with no testing. They can just shove it out. Another thing to think about is they're using this CRISPR technology. So you can get a machine, like we could get a machine for $2,000 and make our own anything we want using CRISPR technology. So they're starting to put them into every high school for science fairs, and the kids can experiment. But the thing is, once you have made this new, you know, engineered organism, it's out there. There's no taking it back.
No.
And so this is a really, really, really scary thing that is happening right now with this field. People are not thinking about the repercussions of
It's like Jurassic Park.
it is. That's a really good example. I never thought about that, but that's exactly what it is. If you haven't watched that movie, you should go out and watch it. I don't even remember.
Yeah, watch the series because it gets worse. The whole world gets taken over.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
The feel good podcast. But really, I mean, it's scary because you just don't know. And
Yeah.
it's just anybody can make up anything and put it out there right now, which is pretty scary.
Yeah.
And the other thing about it that I wrote down is it has the potential to touch on virtually all aspects of our life. So it's
Yeah.
not like, GMOs that are in our food, which have gone into our products and things like that. And you can kind of avoid, I mean, you pretty much avoid GMOs once you understand about them and you know what to look for.
Right.
It's almost impossible
Yeah.
to avoid unless you are literally growing your own, working with local farmers that understand this too. I mean, there's ways around it, making your own products, things like that, but you have to be on it and you have to
Right.
be diligent and really coming back to a very basic level. I mean, that's the only way to avoid this. I mean, it just is. And I did write down, it's not just produce. Like oftentimes people think it's just produce or food products.
Right.
So it right now, when I wrote down this list, which actually was probably about 6 months ago, so who knows, so really changed a lot by now, but it's in food, and I'm talking like processed food, packaged food. If you're looking at lab grown meat, that
Oh yeah.
vegetarian meat, vegetarian dairy products, all of those weird things that are coming out right now, it is in all of those across the board. It's in pesticides. It
Right.
is a pesticide. It's actually a registered pesticide. If you look up, if you're like us and like to really dig deep and look at patents, but it is like even that appeal, for example,
Right.
is a registered pesticide. That's what it is. So pesticides, pharmaceuticals was one of the first places that
Right.
it
Because they're already like, in order to make a lot of pharmaceuticals, especially vaccines, they have to, it's a really intensive process and they have to like grow things in an egg, stuff like that. So this really is going to be an area where they can cut costs and then they can make everything, they can have that control end to end. And, that's an industry that doesn't make enough money. So they've got to improve profit.
exactly trillion dollar industry is not enough.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it cuts time, it cuts cost. It's very inexpensive to produce these
Yeah.
things as opposed to something that's a GMO or something that's natural.
Right.
So not only do they make more money on the end with the patents and things like that, it also cuts cost in the whole process.
Yes.
Plus, it cuts the time, so you don't have that cost too. So as far as a business standpoint,
Right. And it cuts variables. Like you can just take the pieces and parts that you need and you don't have to deal with life. You don't have to deal with maybe this plant just doesn't want to grow or maybe this egg is not great. Like, it's going to be exactly the same every single time because that's how you're printing it out, essentially.
exactly. So pharmaceuticals, and I mean pharmaceuticals big time. So we're talking medications. Like I said, I saw it first in the COVID shot. I don't think it's in any other injections at this point, maybe right now, but I think it's just that. Like that's when they rolled it out. And I don't think it's gone any further, but they have a whole bunch in the works.
Yes, this is where they're going to implement it.
Moving forward, the injections that will be coming and the ones that are already like on the childhood vaccine schedule and things like that, they want to switch it over to this. So anytime you see mRNA, it is this. So just keep that in mind. and that's just one word for it. But it's also in medications, like I said. Also, you hear a lot right now on the monoclonal antibodies.
Mhm.
Those are, if you look into it, those are all this stem cell research, that had been going on. But anyone that's getting stem cell treatments, it's all this. Also, there's a lot of cancer treatments right now. So
Mhm.
there's a lot of new ones where they take out your natural T cells, which are your first line of defense that would seek out
Yeah.
cancer cells and kill them. They're killer cells, that's what they're called. So they pull out all your T cells, they put them through this process, they reprogram them, then they grow them in this fermenting vat, like we were talking about. And then once they have several million of them, then they put them back into your body.
Right.
And with the purpose of looking for the particular cancer that you have.
Right.
But imagine the consequences of that. So now your natural line of defense, which should be looking for anything, killer cells are always on the lookout for anything bad in your body that they need to get rid of. So now they've been reprogrammed and multiplied, put back in to only look for that one lymphoma or whatever you have.
Right.
So what's going to happen with anything else that comes up in your body? And if you don't change anything that caused that lymphoma in the first place, you're going to have other things come up. So now what's going to happen when they're only looking for this, just
Right.
mind blowing if you really think about it. But this is brand new. This is something I think just within the last year, less than a year, that this has come out. So these are constantly, quickly coming out. Also, just on a side note, think about, they just took out part of you, reprogrammed it, computer programming, put it back in your body.
Right.
You are now, in my mind, not completely life. Like, you now have what did you call it?
Bioidentical.
Not bioidentical,
Oh.
but you have pre-programmed
Yeah.
non-life in your body, bioengineered. So anyway, just think about that. Also biofuels, and this is coming back to what Jenny said about that word bio. So biofuels, you see that is this process that they do.
Right.
Tons
And
of
that started like to find, plant-based
right,
uh
with ethanol with corn.
right, to replace petroleum in our energy needs. But any time that you have something plant-based that you could synthesize instead of growing that plant, we've gone over this several times now, it just makes it cheaper, easier, and more stable. So all of those biofuels are going to move into this because do you want to grow several, billion acres of corn and harvest and process, or do you just want to engineer that piece that you need and end up with the end product?
Right. And the growing the several thousand acres of corn is also bad because it's GMO corn sprayed with all kinds of chemicals. So that's also terrible. So they're both terrible. So it's just a bad alternative to something else that's bad rather
Yeah.
than coming up with a good alternative,
We don't really have a good way to create the energy that we use. We need to just use less energy.
Right. Yeah, right now energy is an issue, but all of the new things they're coming up with are just as bad as the old things.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that's biofuels. Then you have bioplastics. And again, it's another thing. Plastic is terrible. It's an endocrine disruptor. It's terrible for the environment. It's made from fossil fuels. But now you've got these bioplastics that are made this way,
Plant-based.
plant-based, and that's what they call them. They call them
Yeah.
plant-based plastic. So it makes you feel like, oh, this is such a much better option.
Right.
But it's not. So again, bring your own canvas bag. That takes care of that problem. I mean, literally. That's pretty simple. You don't need this, but be aware, because when it says plant-based plastics, like I noticed at our local health food store, um, they've got these little, like the produce bags. Some people
Mhm.
put, I don't even do that personally, but some people put their produce in bags, right? So you put them in the bags, but they have a really weird feel. Like you can tell it's not the same as a,
Oh yeah, they're like the really soft, weird. I
yeah,
know
it's
what you're talking
almost
about.
like a latexy feel or
Yeah.
something, but it's this natural plant-based bag, but it's not. Also a lot of things that say they're compostable are
Yeah.
these natural plant-based plastics, but now they're going to try to break down into the environment and they're being added into the environment. So there's another big problem. Um, and then you've got flavors in foods. So again, artificial flavors are terrible. They're so bad for your health. But now a lot of these flavors are now the SynBio,
Right. So they're not artificial, but they are
right?
synthetic.
But artificial flavors, they have to label as artificial flavor.
Right.
These, so vanilla, when you get something that says it has vanilla in it, if you see something that says vanilla, you think that's vanilla, right? But vanilla is now the SynBio. So the majority of vanilla is now the SynBio stuff.
Right.
Unless you get an,
'Cause that's one of the like most intensive process. It's expensive. Getting vanilla
right,
flavor from natural vanilla is really labor intensive and expensive. So you can see that where they're starting with these are things that cost a lot and are hard to do. So they're going to replace that with something that's a lot cheaper and a lot easier to control. And then once they do that, then they'll move on to things that are, mid-range expensive and less labor intensive. And then it'll move on to just everything.
right. So like for vanilla, and this is where you have to listen to this, understand what's going on, and then use your discernment. So like vanilla, if it's in a packaged food of any kind, you can pretty much guarantee it's the SynBio stuff. If
Right.
you're buying vanilla, if you're making something you need vanilla for, you want to get vanilla that's organic, and it says comes from like Madagascar vanilla bean,
Right.
or you can get the vanilla beans and make it yourself.
Yeah. I have
Uh,
a little thing that does that.
yeah. So it's easy to do. It's just changing a habit, but just be aware that the majority of vanilla is the SynBio.
And
And
vanilla is not just a flavor, it's also a scent.
yes, I was just going to say that. So like in perfume, oftentimes it is an additive into perfume or any kind of a fragrance. Guaranteed 100% any of those vanillas are this.
Right.
And I
And
know that,
that's a, oh, go ahead.
good. Oh, I was just going to say, I know there's a lot of companies popping up that say it's their natural
Yeah.
fragrance, and they go
That's
on
what I
and
was
on
gonna say.
about how fragrance is bad for you.
Yeah.
But now there are all these natural scents, but they're actually using this. And I think a lot of companies, and this is happening with organics too, they don't know this. So
Right.
they think when somebody offers them, well, this is a natural,
Yeah.
ingredient,
It's not chemical based.
right? Then they're like, oh, great, they can put
Right.
their things. So be really aware of that. And again, use real essential oils. You can find those, make your own fragrance. I mean, again, there's ways
Yeah.
around it, but you have,
Also, the smell of clean is no smell.
right.
So
Unless it says no scent, and then they've also added extra in to
oh,
make
I
it.
was just talking about like as a fragrance in your house.
Yeah,
Like you don't need to perfume yourself. You shouldn't be that stinky. Like,
right. If you're that stinky, that's a health problem.
yes. I know some are, lovely and relaxing, but there's tons of studies on fragrances. So you can, um, kind of move this from the chemical fragrances to the synthetic SynBio fragrances. They say aromatherapy. Everyone's heard of that by now. So if you're taking vanilla and you're putting it out into a room, kids who are hyperactive and crazy, it does very studies, research calm them down. It helps to calm. If you're using synthetic, chemical based, it does the opposite. It creates more chaos in the
Right.
room. And they've
Yeah.
shown that. So, when you're getting a little plug in, you're like, oh, I'll put this lavender or this vanilla in my kid's room and it'll help them sleep. No, it's like amping them up. So you have to assume the same is for the SynBio, that it's not going to have those same properties.
Right. Because naturally your body doesn't recognize it.
Right.
Anything your body doesn't recognize, it starts to have an autoimmune reaction to.
Yeah.
I'll go through this list pretty fast because we're going long, but okay, so fragrances, we said that, vaccines, we said that, anything that says biotechnology, diapers, antifungal and artificial sweeteners.
Yeah.
I guess we talked about that with the stevia, microbes for soil. So this is a scary,
Yeah.
this is a big one. So they're wanting to, they've come up with a SynBio microbe because their reasoning is that our farmland is lacking
It is
microbiome
like it's hard to find actual nutrient dense soil now because our farming is so terrible. We don't
because of
farm right.
GMO farming
Right.
and
And just
breeding crops.
industrial farming, the processes are not natural.
Right. So instead of going back to what we should be doing and regenerating that soil, they've come up with a SynBio soil microbiome that they're planning on just spraying over all the crops. And can you imagine if this, you know, it's not going to just land on the soil, which would be bad enough. It's going to catch the wind and go. I
Yeah.
mean,
You will breathe it in.
right. And what's
All
it
the
going to
animals will
do?
breathe it
All the
in.
microbes in the soil and things like earthworms and life. And I mean, it's just crazy. So they haven't done that yet. There's a lot of pushback for it. But I know at this Davos event in January, that was one of the big topics because they're really excited about it.
Yeah.
So going to look for that. Yeast. So yeast and wine, we mentioned that on different podcasts. Yeast and wine, and beer and different places they use yeast. So look for, I think we said that, wine that says non-GMO yeast. That means non-SynBio yeast. Also rennet and cheese. So the majority of cheese, so cheese is made with rennet, which is actually really disgusting in the first place, but the majority of cheese now use this rennet.
Really anything at a like bacterial level.
Right. Yeah, because it's super easy. They can just
Yeah.
ferment it real quick and have this. So almost all cheese, all dairy uses this. Bakery items use this. Impossible Burger, we talked about things like that. Appeal transglutamase. So that's another thing. Everybody's reacting to gluten or parts of wheat. And a big part of this is transglutamase, which is meat glue, which is found in bakery items, dairy. They use it in meat to glue it together so it looks like a nice big steak or something. But it's many different parts of the meat that they've just glued together with this enzyme. Also sausages, different things. What else? That's all I have on my list, but
That's all. Just everything.
right, but it's in a
Yeah.
lot. And the point is, it's infiltrating very quickly. Your body's going to be reacting to it in an autoimmune level. It's not labeled, it's not tested. There's no way to know it's in there. So the
Yeah.
only solution, and it is a solution, but you have to make changes, is literally get back to nature all the way around.
Yeah.
Like be connecting with nature, be eating as close to the earth as possible, regenerative farmers, growing your own, all that kind of stuff. And then you'll be just fine. But
Yes.
you
You've
have to.
really got to have that foundation of health in place because you're going to get exposed to this. That nobody can truly live outside of this exposure because like Kendra said, it's going to be sprayed, it's going to be in things that then get put in the landfill, that get in the water system, that get in our soil. It's going to be there. We're not sure what that reaction is going to be. But if you have that foundation of health in place and you're making all of those good choices in that personal environment, ring. So the food sourcing, the actions, the cleaning, the products you're buying, then you will reduce your exposure. So your body should be able to deal with what it's coming in contact with.
Right. And that's the whole idea with everything. But really, the scary thing behind this is just that there's no way
Yeah.
to find it on your own. So this is very, very important. It sounds scary, but there's ways around it, like we said, and you've got to be aware of it. Because if you're not aware of it, then it's going to be in all aspects of your life.
Yeah.
And who knows? We have no idea of the repercussions because, like we said, there's been zero testing on it whatsoever. So this is a good podcast to share with your friends, share with anyone you can, because nobody knows about this. Nobody's talking about this. And it's really, really, really important. And this is just the beginning of this. So definitely share this one. And I think we've come to the end of our big list.
Yes. So again, this podcast, we do try to put all the information out there that you're not getting from your normal sources. And a lot of times that means kind of big, kind of scary topics, but we also try to give you tools so that you can deal with that. So don't go, build a bunker and hide from the SynBio. It won't work. Stick with the program, stick with what you can do. Remember to give yourself a little bit of space, time to process, and then just have it in your awareness, and your brain will do great things and remind you when it needs to be on the lookout for these things.
And just to play on what Jenny just said, we are not here to give you scary information. Like, that is neither one of our personalities at all. That's not where we live. But the problem is what is being done very quickly to everything, that we have contact with because of industry.
Yeah.
Are these things. And so, that's our job, to research these and then pass that information on to you. We're not doing this as a let's get lots of viewers because we're giving you information. It's like just literally what is happening and affecting everyone's health across the board, and not just everyone's health, the health of the entire planet. I mean, it just is.
Yes, for sure.
That is all for today, I think.
All right. Well,
as always, thank you for listening, and like and share. And if you're overwhelmed doing this on your own, of course, we have our programs, and you can always work with us, work with one of our PHPs. Otherwise, if you like researching this on your own and you're getting enough information, what we're getting from you, then that's great too. So, but definitely share this if you have anyone that you think would be willing to listen, because it's really important for all of us.
Okay. All right. Until next time.
Bye, everybody.